Welcome, traveler. We're glad you're here. Every story you hear is made with care and passion. If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and check out the other adventures waiting for you on our channel. Your support means the world. Thank you. Eloise woke to the sound of her toaster playing Mozart Symphony No. 40 in G minor, except every third note was replaced with the sound of a duck quacking underwater. She groaned and buried her head under her pillow, which had, for reasons beyond her comprehension, developed a habit of offering philosophical commentary on her dreams. Your subconscious preoccupation with differential equations solving themselves incorrectly suggests unresolved anxiety about your cosmic responsibilities, the pillow mused in a soothing voice. Or maybe, Eloise mumbled, it means I miss teaching freshman physics without worrying about universal collapse. She'd almost adjusted to the strange benefits of universe ownership, perfect coffee every morning, houseplants that rearranged themselves for optimal feng shui, and the occasional helpful household item developing sentience. But these perks hardly balanced the cosmic anxiety that came with the job. Her phone chimed with the special tone she'd come to dread, the universal crisis notification. She reluctantly checked the screen. Cosmic harmonics destabilizing across 17 galaxies. Fundamental constants at risk. Universal recalibration required. Fantastic, she muttered. Just what I needed on a Tuesday. The air beside her bed shimmered, and paradox materialized, today appearing as something between a Victorian gentleman and a fractal pattern that hurt to look at directly. I see you've received the notification, they said, twirling a cane that occasionally phased through the floor. Rather inconvenient timing. The universal constants haven't gone haywire in at least 7,000 years. And this is my problem because? Eloise asked, though she already knew the answer. Because you, Paradox pointed the cane at her, which briefly turned into a flamingo before returning to cane form, purchased the universe. Rather carelessly, I might add. Before Eloise could respond with her usual caustic retort, Neem appeared, their crystalline form today resembling a constellation of data fragments arranged in what might be interpreted as business casual attire. I've accessed memories across 14 affected systems, Neem announced, their voice fluctuating between that of a BBC narrator and a small child. Gravity is functioning at 76% efficiency in the Andromeda Galaxy. On Proxima Centauri b, the strong nuclear force took a 17-second coffee break, causing temporary atomic destabilization across the northern hemisphere. Coffee break. Eloise raised an eyebrow. Fundamental forces don't take coffee breaks. They do now, Paradox said with unsettling cheerfulness. The harmonic resonance that maintains universal constants is falling out of tune. Think of it as a cosmic orchestra where half the musicians have decided to improvise. Eloise sighed and got out of bed. So what do we do? Call the cosmic conductor? Close. Paradox's form shifted slightly, adding what appeared to be enthusiastic jazz hands to their Victorian silhouette. We need to find the universal tuning fork. The what now? Neem's form rippled with excitement. The universal tuning fork. According to memories from 73 different civilizations, it's an artifact of immense power, capable of resonating at the exact frequency needed to recalibrate cosmic harmonics. And where exactly is this magical tuning fork? Eloise asked, already dreading the answer. In the interdimensional pocket realm of Euclidia, Paradox said, twirling their cane. Home to a civilization that worships mathematics as religion. Of course it is, Eloise muttered, heading to her closet, which had helpfully laid out an outfit suitable for interdimensional travel. Let me guess, they won't just hand it over. Indeed not, Paradox confirmed. They guard the fork with zealous fervor. You'll need to prove your worthiness through a series of increasingly abstract mathematical challenges. Lovely. And why am I doing this instead of literally any other being in existence? Because, Neem said, their voice suddenly echoing with the gravitas of 1,000 historians, only the universe's owner can properly calibrate the fork to the specific harmonic resonance of their universe. Convenient, Eloise grumbled, pulling on the clothes her closet had suggested, comfortable yet formal attire in a shade of blue that seemed to shift depending on which universal constant you were contemplating. As she dressed, the crisis notification on her phone updated with alarming details from across the universe. In the Sombrero Galaxy, light had started traveling at different speeds depending on its mood. In NGC 4889, the gravitational constant was oscillating like a sine wave, causing planetary orbits to resemble elaborate spirograph patterns. "We need to hurry," Paradox said, suddenly serious. "The pattern of disruption is spreading according to a specific mathematical sequence." "What kind of sequence?" Eloise asked. Paradox shifted forms rapidly, cycling through geometries Eloise didn't have names for, before settling on something resembling a mathematician's chalkboard covered in equations. "It's a modified Fibonacci sequence, but with imaginary numbers and occasional existential questions inserted as variables." "That's not how math works," Eloise protested. "It is in Euclidia," Neem supplied helpfully. "According to my memories, their arithmetic includes emotional components. 2 plus 2 equals 4, but only if the 4 is feeling particularly concrete that day." Eloise pinched the bridge of her nose. "Let's just go before I change my mind." Traveling between dimensions had become distressingly routine for Eloise. Paradox created a door by folding space-time like origami. Neem solidified the pathway by anchoring it with specific memories of Euclidia from various travelers throughout history, and Eloise used her cosmic connection to validate their passage through the barrier between realities. They stepped through into Euclidia, and Eloise immediately felt a headache forming. Euclidia wasn't just a place that valued mathematics, it was mathematics made manifest. The landscape consisted of perfect geometric shapes that rearranged themselves according to unseen equations. Buildings rose in fractal patterns, streets followed logarithmic spirals, and the inhabitants, if they could be called that, appeared to be sentient mathematical proofs wandering about in vaguely humanoid form. "Welcome to Euclidia," said an approaching figure composed entirely of glowing equations that rearranged themselves as it moved. "I am Theorem, first postulate of the Euclidean High Council. We have been expecting the universe owner." "You have?" Eloise asked, surprised. "Of course. The probability of your arrival approached certainty as cosmic harmonics deteriorated beyond standard deviation parameters." "Right," Eloise said, trying to sound confident. "I'm here for the universal tuning fork." "Yes," Theorem replied. "You must prove your worthiness through the sacred trials of validation. Please follow me to the Axiom Arena." As they walked through the mathematical city, Eloise whispered to Paradox, "Any advice for these trials?" "Don't think like a physicist," Paradox said cryptically. "Think like the universe itself." "That's remarkably unhelpful." "I find advice is most valuable when it's least understood initially," Paradox replied with insufferable smugness, and Neem, whose crystalline form was reflecting the mathematical patterns around them in mesmerizing ways, added, "According to memories from previous universe owners, the trials test not just mathematical ability but one's connection to cosmic principles. They reveal uncomfortable truths." "Great," Eloise muttered. "More cosmic therapy sessions." The Axiom Arena turned out to be a vast amphitheater where the audience consisted entirely of floating mathematical symbols that murmured theorems to each other in hushed tones. At the center stood 3 pedestals, each bearing a different abstract shape that somehow hurt Eloise's eyes to look at directly. "The 3 trials await," announced Theorem. "The trial of principles, the trial of paradoxes, and finally, the trial of unity. Begin when ready." Eloise approached the first pedestal cautiously. The shape upon it kept shifting, never settling on a final form. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked. "Resolve the unresolvable," Theorem replied, as if that explained everything. Paradox sighed dramatically. "They want you to find the consistent principle within the inconsistent form." "Really, these mathematical types are so predictable in their unpredictability." Eloise stared at the shifting shape, trying to discern any pattern. Her physics training had taught her to look for underlying principles, but this shape seemed to defy all logical analysis. Then she remembered Paradox's advice, "Think like the universe itself." "The universe doesn't try to understand itself," she murmured. "It just is." Taking a deep breath, she stopped trying to analyze the shape and instead tried to feel its rhythm, the way she sometimes felt the pulse of the universe when she wasn't actively fighting against her cosmic connection. Suddenly, she saw it, not a visual pattern, but a harmonic one. The shape wasn't changing randomly, it was cycling through forms that resonated with different aspects of universal constants. She placed her hand above the shape and hummed a note that matched its harmonic frequency. The shape immediately stabilized into a perfect dodecahedron that glowed with soft blue light. The first trial is complete, announced Theorem. Proceed to the second. The second pedestal held what appeared to be two identical objects that somehow occupied the same space without touching, a paradox made manifest. Great, Eloise muttered. I happen to be traveling with the walking embodiment of paradox, and yet I'm the one who has to solve this. You flatter me, Paradox said, twirling their cane, which had now transformed into an umbrella despite there being no sign of rain. But I'm afraid this is a journey you must take alone, dear Eloise. Neem floated closer, their crystalline structure pulsing with soft light. I've found memories of similar trials. They typically require acknowledging both the separateness and unity of contradictory elements. Eloise studied the paradoxical objects. They were the same and yet different, together and yet apart. She thought about her own paradoxical situation, owner of a universe she didn't want, responsible for cosmic maintenance she never asked for. Sometimes, she said quietly, contradictions aren't meant to be resolved. They simply coexist. She reached out and touched both objects simultaneously. Instead of choosing one reality over the other, she acknowledged both, and suddenly the objects merged into a single shape that was somehow still two distinct entities. The second trial is complete, Theorem announced. Proceed to the final trial. The third pedestal was empty. There's nothing here, Eloise said, confused. The trial of unity requires bringing together that which is separate, Theorem explained. You must unite the fundamental forces that have fallen out of harmony. But I don't have, Eloise began, then stopped as realization dawned. The trials themselves were creating the components I need. She took the dodecahedron from the first pedestal and the paradoxical merged object from the second, bringing them to the empty third pedestal. As she held them above it, they began to resonate together, creating a harmonic tone that seemed to vibrate through Eloise's very atoms. Now, Theorem instructed, you must add the final component, your own cosmic resonance as universe owner. My what now? Whether you acknowledge it or not, Paradox said softly, suddenly beside her, you have developed a unique harmonic signature as caretaker of the universe. A frequency that only you can produce. How do I access that? Neem stepped forward, their crystalline form glowing brightly. I can help. I've been collecting memories of your interactions with the universe since you became its owner. Perhaps seeing them will help you connect. Before Eloise could respond, Neem projected a series of memories around them, moments when Eloise had unconsciously tapped into her cosmic connection. The perfect coffee every morning. The plants that thrived under her care. The way she had instinctively known how to resolve the quantum entanglement in the Messier 87 galaxy. These aren't just coincidences, Neem said gently. This is you, caring for the universe even while denying your connection to it. Eloise felt something shift inside her, a reluctant acknowledgement that perhaps she wasn't entirely unsuited for this role. She closed her eyes and tried to feel the subtle connection that had been growing despite her best efforts to ignore it. A soft hum rose from her throat, not a sound she consciously chose, but one that seemed to emerge from somewhere deeper, a frequency that matched some fundamental aspect of the universe itself. The objects in her hands resonated in response, glowing brighter and brighter until they merged into a single artifact, a tuning fork made of material that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, vibrating with potential energy. The universal tuning fork has accepted you, Theorem announced. Now you must use it to restore cosmic harmony before the disruptions reach critical threshold. And how exactly do I do that? Eloise asked, carefully holding the fork that hummed with power in her hands. The fork must be activated at the exact center point of the harmonic disruptions, Theorem explained. A location that shifts as the pattern evolves. Paradox stepped forward, their form shifting to something resembling a star chart. I've been tracking the pattern. The center point is currently located in the void between the Triangulum and Andromeda galaxies, a point of perfect mathematical balance. Then that's where we need to go, Eloise said with new determination. As they prepared to leave Euclidia, Theorem approached with a warning: be cautious, universe owner. The harmonic disruptions have created anomalies. Reality itself may behave unpredictably near the center point. When doesn't it? Eloise muttered, but she nodded her thanks for the warning. Traveling to the center point proved more challenging than anticipated. The fabric of space-time had become wrinkled and distorted by the harmonic disruptions, making interdimensional pathways unstable. It's like trying to fold a wet paper towel, Paradox complained as their third attempt at creating a portal collapsed in on itself. The usual rules simply aren't applying. Let me try something, Neem offered. Their crystalline form reconfigured, facets aligning in complex patterns. I have memories of similar harmonic disruptions from previous universal cycles. Perhaps I can stabilize a pathway by creating a memory echo of stable space-time. Neem projected a crystalline structure that somehow reinforced reality around them, creating a tunnel of stable space-time through the chaotic distortions. Impressive, Paradox admitted grudgingly. Quick thinking, Neem, Eloise added, genuinely impressed. Memory is more than recording, it's preserving patterns, Neem replied, their form glowing with pleasant embarrassment at the praise. They traveled through Neem's stabilized pathway, emerging into the void between galaxies, a darkness punctuated by the distant glow of stars and the swirling shapes of galaxies millions of light-years away. But the void wasn't empty anymore. The harmonic disruptions had manifested visually as rippling waves of energy that distorted the very fabric of reality. Fundamental forces flickered and wavered like candles in a draft. There, Paradox pointed to a spot where the waves seemed to originate. The center point. As they approached, the distortions intensified. Gravity fluctuated wildly, one moment crushing them with immense force, the next leaving them weightless. Light bent in impossible angles, creating afterimages and premonitions simultaneously. Time itself hiccuped, causing Eloise to experience the same moment repeatedly or skip ahead unpredictably. This is worse than I anticipated, Paradox admitted, their forms struggling to maintain coherence as reality itself became unreliable. The harmonic disruptions are approaching critical threshold. What happens at critical threshold? Eloise asked, clutching the tuning fork tightly. Universal constants fail completely, Neem answered, their voice somber. I have memories from civilizations that witness similar events in other universes. When fundamental forces fail, reality unravels. Fantastic, Eloise muttered. No pressure. They reached the center point, a spot that looked no different from the surrounding void yet felt fundamentally wrong, like a splinter in reality itself. Now what? Eloise asked. Strike the fork, Paradox instructed. Its resonance will reconnect the harmonic patterns. Eloise raised the tuning fork, ready to strike it against. She realized there was nothing to strike it against. What do I hit it on? On nothing, Paradox said cryptically. Or perhaps on everything. The fork doesn't resonate with physical matter but with reality itself. That's not helpful. As they argued, the harmonic disruptions intensified. A wave of distortion passed through them, temporarily separating Eloise's constituent atoms by several meters before snapping back together, a deeply unpleasant experience. We're running out of time, Neem warned, their crystalline form beginning to fracture under the strain of the fluctuating physical laws. Eloise took a deep breath and tried to center herself. The fork hummed in her hands, resonating with something beyond physical reality. She remembered the connection she had felt in Euclidia, the subtle link between herself and the universe she reluctantly owned. She closed her eyes and struck the fork against nothing. Nothing happened. It's not working, she cried as another wave of distortion approached, this one larger than the previous. You're still resisting, Paradox shouted over the growing chaos. You must truly accept your connection to the universe for the fork to recognize you as its rightful wielder. I never wanted this responsibility. Eloise shouted back. And yet it's yours, Neem said, their voice somehow calm despite their fragmenting form. I have memories of your predecessors, Eloise. Many never wanted the responsibility either, but the universe chose them nonetheless. The universe is a shop inventory item. It didn't choose anything. Didn't it? Paradox's form shifted rapidly between states, struggling to maintain coherence. Of all the beings in existence, the Chronoflux Emporium appeared to you. Perhaps there are no accidents in a universe where probability is itself a conscious force. The wave of distortion hit them full force. Paradox's form scattered across multiple dimensions. Neem's crystalline structure shattered into thousands of memory fragments. Eloise felt her own molecular structure begin to destabilize as the fundamental forces holding her atoms together began to fail. In that moment of literal disintegration, Eloise had a revelation. She had been viewing universe ownership as a burden, an unwanted responsibility she could eventually return like an ill-fitting sweater. But what if it wasn't something she could simply give back? What if this was now fundamentally part of who she was? As her very atoms threatened to drift apart, Eloise finally stopped fighting against her connection to the universe and instead embraced it fully. "Fine," she whispered to the universe around her. "I accept." The tuning fork in her disintegrating hand suddenly blazed with light. Eloise struck it again, not against any physical object, but against the fabric of reality itself, a movement that made no logical sense yet felt instinctively right. The fork produced a tone unlike anything Eloise had ever heard, a sound that wasn't really a sound but rather a fundamental vibration that resonated with the very structure of existence. It spread outward from the center point, realigning the harmonic patterns, re-establishing the relationships between fundamental forces. Reality stabilized around them, gravity resumed its proper strength, light traveled at its intended speed, and atoms remembered how they were supposed to behave. But the stabilization created a backlash, a wave of concentrated harmonic energy that rushed back toward them. The recalibration is creating a feedback loop. Paradox shouted, their form partially restored but still unstable. "We need to get out of here." "The portal." Eloise looked back at their entry point, which was rapidly collapsing as reality restructured itself. "Neem, can you stabilize it again?" But Neem's shattered form was still reconstituting, fragments of memory slowly pulling back together. I cannot," Neem managed, their voice fragmented across multiple tones. Too dispersed, the harmonic backlash approached rapidly, a wall of concentrated energy that would destroy anything caught in its path, even the universe owner herself. "Eloise!" Paradox called, reaching out with a form that kept shifting between solid and gaseous states. "We must go now." Eloise looked at the tuning fork in her hands, still resonating with cosmic energy. "No. You two go. I have to make sure the recalibration completes properly." "Don't be absurd," Paradox snapped. "Even universe owners aren't immortal." "But the universe needs to complete its recalibration," Eloise insisted. "Someone has to stay and maintain the harmonic pattern until it stabilizes." "Then I'll stay," Paradox offered, surprising both Eloise and themselves with the selfless gesture. "You can't. Your form is too unstable right now. And Neem is still reconstituting. It has to be me." Paradox hesitated, then nodded. "Perhaps this is why the universe chose you after all." They gathered Neem's still reforming fragments and moved toward the collapsing portal. Eloise turned to face the approaching harmonic backlash, holding the tuning fork before her like a shield. She closed her eyes and focused on maintaining the connection she had finally accepted, the link between herself and the universe she now acknowledged as her responsibility. The backlash hit with the force of 1,000 supernovas, enveloping Eloise completely. She felt herself disintegrating again, but this time at a fundamental level that went beyond physical matter. Her very consciousness was being unmade. In her last moments of coherent thought, Eloise reflected that at least she'd finally figured out her purpose in this bizarre cosmic arrangement, just in time to be erased from existence. Typical, but then something unexpected happened. As her consciousness began to disperse into the harmonic energy, Eloise felt herself expanding, not disappearing, but becoming more. Her awareness spread through the harmonic patterns, touching galaxies and atoms and everything in between. For one transcendent moment, Eloise wasn't just the universe's owner, she was the universe experiencing itself, and then, just as suddenly, she was being pulled back together, reconstructed atom by atom into her human form. She gasped and opened her eyes to find herself floating in the void, whole and alive, with the tuning fork still clutched in her hands. The harmonic patterns had stabilized, reality had reasserted itself, and the backlash had rewritten itself around her, no, not around her. Through her. The universe had recognized its owner and preserved her, integrating the harmonic backlash into her own resonance pattern. A small portal opened beside her, and Paradox's head poked through, their form now stabilized into something resembling an overly concerned Victorian gentleman with too many eyes. "You're alive," they exclaimed, sounding genuinely surprised. "How remarkably inconvenient for my dramatic exit." "Sorry to disappoint," Eloise replied weakly. "Not at all. Though I had prepared quite a moving eulogy. Would you like to hear it anyway? I rarely get the opportunity to deliver pre-written eulogies to their still-living subjects." "I'll pass," Eloise said, floating toward the portal. "Is Mneem okay?" "Fully reconstituted and already archiving memories of your apparent demise and surprising resurrection. Quite the efficient memory construct, that one." As Eloise passed through the portal back to normal space, she felt different, more connected to the universe around her, more attuned to its rhythms and needs. The universal tuning fork had gone dormant in her hands, its task complete for now. Mneem greeted her with a crystalline embrace that somehow conveyed genuine emotion. "I've never been so pleased to add a memory of being incorrect about someone's permanent dissolution." "Thanks, Mneem," Eloise said, patting their crystalline surface awkwardly. "I appreciate the sentiment." "So," Paradox said, twirling their cane, which had returned to normal, or at least Paradox's version of normal. "I suppose this means you've accepted your role as universe owner." Eloise looked at the tuning fork in her hands, then at the stars around them, stars that continued to shine because she had accepted her responsibility. "I suppose I have," she admitted. "Though I still have questions about how I ended up in this position." "Don't we all?" Paradox mused cryptically. "The universe rarely explains its reasoning." "Well, at least my coffee will continue to be perfect," Eloise said with a small smile. "That's something." As they prepared to return to Earth, Eloise couldn't help but wonder what other cosmic crises awaited her. Being universe owner certainly wasn't the peaceful retirement from academia she had once envisioned for herself. But perhaps, she reflected, watching Paradox and Mneem bicker good-naturedly about the proper way to fold space-time, it wasn't the worst job in existence either, and maybe, just maybe, she was starting to enjoy it, just a little bit, but she'd never admit that to Paradox. Their smugness was already barely tolerable. As they traveled back through the dimensions, Eloise felt the universal tuning fork hum softly in her pocket, a reminder of her new connection to the universe and the responsibilities that came with it. A connection she had finally, reluctantly, begun to accept. After all, universal constants didn't maintain themselves, and someone had to make sure reality kept playing in tune.